She escaped her toxic marriage and boarded a plane, unaware the man beside her was a mafia boss. It has been 6 months Amelia has planned to leave her toxic marriage, but the thought of surviving weighed her down, leaving her to endure the pain and beating. The clock on the kitchen wall had a cruel way of ticking, like it was keeping score of every second Amelia survived. In 6 months, she had learned the rhythms of her husband's rage the way sailors learn the moods of the sea. The slam of the gate that meant his day had gone badly. The scrape of shoes on tile that told her whether drinks had already lit a fuse. The false softness of his voice when he called her darling before the storm. 6 months of slipping coins into the lining of an old purse. 6 months of counting, recounting, and recounting again, like prayer beads. 6 months of keeping her smile stitched together by thread so thin a breath could break it. Amelia had been an orphan who learned early that the world didn't slow down for the small or the scared. Then he found her, Leon, the billionaire with the glossy magazines and the polished interviews, the man who could turn any room into a cathedral of attention. He'd seen her at a charity gala where she was pouring wine, her hands trembling from exhaustion and the chill of the air conditioning. He smiled at her like she mattered. He told her he would make sure she never had to count coins again. He fixed the roof over her head, stocked her fridge, and wrapped her loneliness in silk. People called it a fairy tale. They weren't there for the after. Fairy tales have palaces. Palaces have doors that lock from the outside. The night before the escape began with a shadow moving across the hallway and ended with Amelia on the bathroom floor, breath shallow, skin hot, where his ring had scratched it. She used to try to reason with him. She used to apologize for his anger as if it had been her clumsiness that knocked the bottle over, her fault that the market dipped that day, her mistake that the headlines were unkind. The last few months, she had learned a new method: silence. Silence survived. Silence stored energy for a future that might still exist. She sat against the bathtub, fingers pressed to the small welt blooming near her hairline, and whispered to the faucet like it was a friend. Tomorrow. The word felt illegal in her mouth. She had counted every dollar. Tips quietly pocketed from the house staff when she passed through the kitchen with a tray, tiny refunds from returning dresses she pretended not to like, a $10 bill she found wedged behind the laundry machine like a message from another life. Her nest egg wasn't a fortune. It was hope measured in crumpled bills. At 4:10 a.m., while the palatial house rested in the thick, expensive quiet that only big money buys, she slid out of bed and moved through the dark like a thought she didn't want to scare away. In the closet, she did not reach for diamonds or designer luggage. She pulled the battered purse from the top shelf, its lining stitched with her secret, and a small backpack with a sweater, a water bottle, a few toiletries, and a passport she'd hidden inside the pages of a cookbook. Her heartbeat lived in her throat. Downstairs, she passed the grand piano where she had been instructed to sit during dinner parties like a tasteful ornament. The keys stared back like teeth. The front door's lock clicked open as gently as she could make it. For a moment she waited, senses straining for footsteps, for the alarm of a voice that owned everything it surveyed. Nothing. The night only breathed. Outside, the driver usually assigned to Madam was snoring in the servant quarters. She didn't dare wake him. She walked, slipped past the gates just as dawn began sketching a thin gray line on the horizon, called a ride with a phone bought secondhand and paid in cash, and told the driver the first lie a survivor learns to master. "I'm just visiting my sister." The driver nodded like people do when money changes hands and stories aren't their business. The airport was a city of its own. Rolling suitcases, coffee steam, bored children, and adults pretending they weren't running from something. Amelia moved through it with practiced invisibility, shoulders rounded, gaze low, steps steady. She bought a ticket with a name that matched her passport and a flight that left before the sun could fully sit up in the sky. Gate B14. She sat, back to the wall, like the chair might catch her if she fell apart. When they called boarding, fear hit her in a single, animal wave. What if he woke and checked the cameras? What if he tracked her phone? What if money could turn all exit signs into dead ends? She felt the urge to run, except there was nowhere to run to except forward. She stood, scan moved. The scanner beeped green. The jet bridge breathed cool air on her face. She stepped onto the plane. Row 14. Seat C window. She pressed her forehead to the plastic oval and let herself look small. As the aisle filled with the little tragedies of overhead bins and elbow wars, a man slid into 14B with the quiet confidence of someone who never doubts there will be space for him. He carried himself like gravity had a contract with his shoes. Tailored charcoal suit, black shirt open one button, too many for a businessman. A scar lightly etched near his collarbone like punctuation instead of injury. His hair was dark, cleanly cut. He smelled faintly of cedar and winter. He didn't look at her at first. He looked at the aisle, then at his watch, then at nothing, like someone accustomed to making plans inside his own head. The plane shoved itself away from the gate, and the runway stretched like a dare. When the wheels lifted, Amelia's breath caught, and then, unexpectedly, loosened. The ground didn't own her. Not anymore. It was turbulence that made him notice. A sudden drop, the kind that made passengers clutch at armrests and flight attendants glance at each other like weather forecasters on live TV. Amelia flinched. The movement pulled the collar of her sweater sideways, exposing a constellation of fading bruises across her shoulder, yellow blooming into green, green into a sickly brown. The man in 14B turned his head because of the jolt and then didn't turn it back. His eyes were the kind that forgot to lie, sharp as a blade, but heavy with thought. He didn't stare like the curious, the judgmental, or the hungry. He stared like a man memorizing a problem he intended to solve. "Are you okay?" The question was low, careful, almost like he didn't want to startle a wild animal. Amelia's mouth tried a practiced answer. "I'm fine, thank you." The words felt absurd even as they came out. He reached for the call button and then stopped, considering. "Headaches get worse during flights," he said, not accusing, just offering a fact like an umbrella. "If you want, you can rest." He tilted his shoulders slightly toward her, an invitation without a hint of presumption. It steadies the motion. No one had offered her a shoulder that wasn't going to demand interest in years. She hesitated, dignity wrestling with the need to survive the next 3 hours in a pressurized tube of strangers. He didn't push. He simply shifted, resting his forearm lightly on the armrest between them, making himself into a wall she could lean on if she chose. She chose. Her head found the line between his chest and shoulder, a place that felt absurdly like a promise. The scent of cedar and winter calmed her faster than the white noise of the cabin. She closed her eyes and counted. 1 breath, 2, 10, 20. Her mind finally drifted to that strange land between sleep and vigilance where alarms still ring but sound far away. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He adjusted his posture so her neck wouldn't cramp, and with his free hand, barely perceptible, he tugged the overhead air nozzle to a gentle stream so she wouldn't overheat. The gesture was instinctive, thoughtless, the kind that reveals a person's truest language. When the seatbelt sign dinged off, a flight attendant started down the aisle with the powdered smile of service. The man raised a finger. "Not now." The smile softened into something real. She moved on. An hour later, Amelia stirred, disoriented by the intimacy of peace. Memory flooded back. The house, the bruises, the plan, the takeoff, the stranger. She sat up, cheeks warming. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes avoiding his. No apology necessary. His voice had the faintest slice of an accent, European perhaps, softened by years of everywhere. "I'm Dante." She almost didn't offer her name. Names are keys. Keys open doors. Doors can be kicked in. But he'd given his. "Amelia." "Nice to meet you, Amelia." He didn't thrust out a hand or try a joke. He just gave her the respect of ordinary conversation, the kind you forget how to have when your house is a stage for someone else's moods. The flight attendant reappeared. "Something to drink?" "Water," Amelia said. "Same," Dante added, then nodded at the attendant's wrist. "You changed your watch band. New leather suits you." She blinked, surprised by his noticing. "I did. Thank you." She poured 2 cups, set them down with a little more care than regulation requires, and disappeared with a smile that wasn't powdered at all. Dante waited until they were alone again. "If I ask a question that's none of my business, tell me to stop." He paused. "Are you traveling to someone or away from someone?" The truth leaped to her throat. She swallowed it. "Away." He nodded once like a chess player seeing the next 3 moves. He didn't say why. Instead, "Do you have a safe place to land?" Amelia's laugh came out thin. "I have a hotel for 2 nights. After that, I have mornings." The corner of his mouth lifted, not in humor, but in acknowledgement of a specific kind of courage. Mornings are a start. Silence filled the space between them, not the heavy kind that comes from danger, but the strange, suspended kind that shows up right before a decision. Dante studied the seat in front of him for a beat, then spoke like he was picking up a conversation they'd already been having. "I hate seeing bruises on women," he said, quiet steel threading through the words. "And I've seen a lot. More than anyone should." He didn't look at her as he said it. He looked at the aisle again, and the scar near his collarbone seemed to remember something. "If someone did that to you, I need you to know one thing. It's not your fault." No one had ever said that sentence to her without a "but" waiting behind it. Amelia stared at the tray table latch until it blurred. "Thank you." They didn't speak for a while. The plane hummed, and people snored, and a child somewhere near the back asked for apple juice like it was the most important thing in the world. At 38,000 feet, life is both unbearably fragile and ridiculously ordinary. When the captain announced the descent, Amelia's pulse began to race again. On the ground, reality would start running and expect her to keep up. Dante noticed the way her hands tightened. "I have an apartment near the city," he said, tone neutral, almost clinical. 2 bedrooms, 24/7 security. You could stay there for a few days while you sort out next steps. No pressure, no cost, no strings. A normal man's offer would have frightened her. Dante's didn't. Not because she trusted strangers, but because his generosity sat on him differently, like armor he put on every day. Still, fear is clever. "I don't know you." "That's wise," he said simply. "You shouldn't." He pulled a card from his wallet. Matte black, no logo, just a number and a first name. "Take this. If you feel unsafe at any moment, call me. Or text. Or ignore it. Your choice." She hesitated, then slipped the card into the hidden lining of her purse, the one that had held 6 months of survival. "Thank you." The wheels kissed the runway. People clapped like they were saving the plane with their palms. The cabin lights shifted to morning. When the seatbelt sign chimed off, Dante didn't jump up like the aisle runners. He waited, letting the frantic world empty out one restless row at a time. As they stood, he shrugged off his jacket and, without asking, draped it over her shoulders. It was warm from his body, heavier than it looked, and it covered the telltale shadows on her skin. "Just until you get to the restroom," he said, as if it were the most mundane thing. "Less attention." She swallowed. "You notice everything. It keeps me alive." They walked off the plane together, 2 strangers connected by a thin thread of decency and something unnameable. At the end of the jet bridge, he slowed. "There will be people who think they can decide your life for you," he said, eyes finally meeting hers. "Don't hand them the pen." The airport roared around them. She nodded. They reached the fork where baggage claim splits from the concourse. Dante gestured toward the signs. "Which way?" "Baggage," she said. "A small backpack." "That's it." They moved in tandem through the crowd. A pair of men in suits stood near the carousel, scanning faces with the efficient disinterest of professionals. Something in the angle of their shoulders tightened Dante's jaw. He shifted subtly, positioning himself to block their view of her, body language turning from hospitable to hawk-like in a heartbeat. "Friends of yours?" he asked lightly. "No," she breathed, panic waking up hard. "Leon used private security like people use coffee." Dante didn't touch her. He simply stepped slightly to the left, making his frame a shield as she retrieved the backpack from the belt. Then, with the ease of someone asking about the weather, he took out his phone and snapped a picture of the suits, of their shoes, of the tiny snake emblem on the watchband of the taller one. "Interesting," he murmured, almost to himself. They drifted toward the exit. The men didn't follow. Yet, outside, the air smelled like rain and car exhaust and mercy. Dante's driver, an older man with kind eyes and a boxer's nose, pulled up in a black sedan. Dante opened the door, then paused, turning to Amelia with an expression that was not gentle anymore. It was protective, and it had teeth. "Last question," he said. "Do you want help? Or do you want me to mind my own business?" Amelia looked at the open car, at the crowds, at the phone clutched in her hand with a number that promised something she couldn't define. She thought about 6 months of counting and the sound of a ring scraping a face. She thought about the way his shoulder had felt like a coastline for a ship that had been storm-tossed too long. "I want help," she said, voice steady for the first time that day. "But I don't want to disappear." I want my life back. Dante nodded once, decisive. Then we start with three things: a doctor, a safe bed, and a plan. He gestured to the car again. She took one step and froze. Across the drop-off lane, a familiar figure had just climbed out of a black SUV, flanked by two men in matching suits. Leon's gaze swept the crowd like a searchlight. It landed on empty space where she had been standing 1 second earlier. Because Dante had already moved. He slid in front of her, calm as a held breath, his voice suddenly knife-sharp as he spoke to his driver without looking away from the threat. Luca. Now. The sedan door burst open. Dante's hand hovered inches from Amelia's elbow, not touching, just guiding, like a current in a river. Get in, he said softly. You're safe. She believed him, even as her heart thundered. She ducked into the back seat. Dante followed, closing the door with a deliberate click. The car shot forward into airport traffic, a black needle threading through a fabric of brake lights. Amelia looked back through the tinted glass. Leon had turned toward the commotion, jaw set, eyes wide with the disbelief of a man who has never been told no. Their gazes didn't meet. Not this time. In the shadowed quiet of the sedan, Dante finally asked the question he'd earned the right to ask. Amelia, he said, eyes steady on hers. Who put those bruises on you? The car raced through the city like it was running from the past. Amelia sat in the back seat, trembling, her fingers gripping the edge of Dante's jacket around her shoulders. The hum of the tires on wet asphalt mixed with the pounding of her heart. Every traffic light felt like a trap. Every honk sounded like a chase. She had imagined escape 1,000 times, but never like this, with a stranger who looked like power wearing a human face. Dante leaned slightly forward, eyes on the rearview mirror. His voice was calm, but it carried the kind of authority that could silence storms. Luca, he said, don't go straight home. Take the long way. We're not being followed, but I don't like coincidences. Yes, boss, the driver replied without question. The word boss hit Amelia's ears and lingered. It wasn't the kind of title people used for regular businessmen. She swallowed hard. Who are you really? Dante turned to her, his expression unreadable, yet strangely kind. Someone who doesn't tolerate men who hurt women. That's all you need to know for now. The car weaved through traffic, neon lights flashing across his face. Amelia studied him, the strong jaw, the calm eyes, the faint scar near his collarbone. Everything about him said danger, yet his tone was steady, protective. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like prey. They pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a sleek apartment building that looked like it had been carved from glass and money. Security cameras blinked silently in every corner. A guard at the entrance saluted Dante like he was royalty. As the elevator doors closed behind them, silence thickened the air. The mirrored walls reflected her bruised face beside his composed one, a haunting contrast between brokenness and control. When the elevator dinged open, Dante led her into a penthouse that could have been a museum. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, rain streaking down the glass like slow tears. Every corner whispered luxury, black marble floors, a grand piano, and shelves of old books that looked untouched. This is temporary, Dante said, walking ahead. Until you figure out what you want next. I can't stay here, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. He'll find me. He always does. Dante turned, eyes steady. Not here. No one gets in without my permission. Not even the devil himself. Something in the way he said it made her believe him. A doctor arrived within 30 minutes. An older woman with silver hair and eyes that knew too many secrets. She examined Amelia quietly while Dante stood near the window, back turned, giving privacy but not distance. She's dehydrated, the doctor said softly when finished. And she has bruising consistent with repeated physical assault. She needs rest, safety, and therapy. Dante nodded once. Handle everything she needs. Double the payment. As the doctor packed her kit, Amelia looked up, her eyes glistening. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Dante's gaze softened. Because someone once helped my sister when I couldn't. I owe the world one good deed for her. It was the first crack in his mystery, the first glimpse of a man who carried ghosts of his own. That night, after the doctor left, Amelia stood by the massive window staring at the city lights. Down below, cars moved like blood through the veins of the city. Inside, The silence felt strange, safe, but heavy. Dante approached quietly. You can take the guest room at the end of the hall. Fresh clothes are in the closet. If you're hungry, the kitchen's stocked. Thank you, she murmured. For everything. He gave a small nod, then hesitated. If you need to talk, don't. Rest first. Talk later. As he turned to leave, she called out, You don't look like a man who sleeps much. He smiled faintly. Neither do you. Hours passed. Amelia lay on the bed, but sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Leon's face. The sneer, the raised hand, the way he'd call her ungrateful after every hit. She sat up, gasping. The city's hum beyond the glass was her only comfort. In the living room, Dante was still awake, a tumbler of whiskey untouched on the table, files spread open before him. The glow from his laptop painted half his face in gold. Amelia stepped closer, drawn by curiosity. What do you do? She asked quietly. He looked up. Business. What kind of business? The kind that keeps people like your husband from sleeping well at night, he said dryly, shutting the laptop. Amelia frowned. You sound like someone who's used to fighting back. I don't fight, he said, standing. I erase problems. She stared at him, realizing what he meant. You're Mafia. The silence that followed was answer enough. Her heartbeat jumped. Every warning she'd ever heard about men like him flashed through her head, but instead of fear, she felt something unexpected, safety. He didn't flinch. Yes, but not the kind you think. I run my family clean. No drugs, no trafficking, no blood for sport. We protect our own, and sometimes we protect strangers who deserve better. She searched his eyes for lies. There were none. Go to sleep, Amelia, he said gently. Tomorrow, you'll decide what you want to do next. I'll make sure you're ready. Morning came with sunlight spilling through glass like forgiveness. The aroma of coffee drifted into her room. For the first time in months, she didn't wake to yelling or footsteps. She woke to peace. She stepped into the living room, wearing one of the shirts he'd left out. Dante stood by the counter, sleeves rolled, stirring his coffee. The sight of him in the soft morning light almost didn't fit the word mafia. He looked like someone who carried both danger and kindness in equal measure. You slept, he said, not asking. I tried, she replied. It's strange not to be afraid. That's what healing feels like at first. Strange. He handed her a mug. Their fingers brushed. For a second, the world outside the window stopped spinning. Then the phone on the counter buzzed. Dante glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened. What is it? She asked. He hesitated, then turned the phone so she could see the message. Your husband filed a missing person report. He's offering a reward. Amelia's blood went cold. He's looking for me. Dante exhaled slowly. He's not just looking. He's hunting. And he's hired people to do it. She gripped the counter. Then I need to go farther. I can't stay here. No, Dante said firmly. Running won't help. He'll use your fear to track you. What we need is to make him believe you've disappeared completely. He walked toward the window, mind already moving faster than words. I can make that happen. I can change your identity, protect your trail. But first, I need to deal with him. Deal with him, she repeated, voice shaking. You mean? I mean in this cycle. Permanently. There was no emotion in his tone, just resolve. Amelia stepped closer, her heart caught between fear and gratitude. You don't have to risk yourself for me. He looked at her, a storm flickering behind his calm expression. He put his hands on you. That makes it my problem now. The silence that followed was electric. 2 days later, Dante's plan began. His men gathered information quietly. Bank accounts, movements, hidden assets, the trail of bribes that kept Leon untouchable. Every secret the billionaire had buried started surfacing like bodies in a lake. Amelia watched from the sidelines, amazed at how efficiently Dante moved through the world, like every door opened before he even knocked. For the first time, the power that once destroyed her life was being used for her. One evening, she found him in the study, sleeves rolled, tie undone, eyes locked on the glowing screen showing Leon's face. You're really doing this, she said softly. He looked up. He's not the first man I've handled for hurting someone defenseless. But you make me want to do it differently. How? He leaned back, eyes never leaving hers. Without revenge. With justice. Something in her chest cracked open. No one's ever said that word for me before. Well, he said, standing, get used to hearing it. That night, She sat on the balcony watching city lights shimmer. The wind tangled her hair, carrying the faint sound of sirens somewhere far below. Dante joined her, 2 glasses of water in hand. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I wasn't going to," she teased weakly. He smirked, the first real smile she'd seen on him. "Good. Because this isn't charity. It's balance." "Balance? Yeah. You spent years surviving monsters. Now it's time someone made them afraid again." Amelia looked at him, the man she'd met on a plane, the man whose world terrified most people. And for the first time, she felt stronger, not smaller. "And what happens when they come for you?" He chuckled softly, eyes on the horizon. "Then they'll wish they hadn't." The wind carried away their words, leaving only the sound of the city below, alive, loud, and full of unfinished stories. But this one was just getting started. The city slept under a sky full of bruised clouds, but Dante didn't. Men like him rarely did. While others dreamed, he planned. While others blinked, he moved. And tonight, the air inside his penthouse was charged like a storm waiting to strike. Amelia sat by the window, clutching a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The glow from the skyline painted her face in soft gold, making her bruises look like fading battle scars. She was healing, slowly, but inside, the fear still lingered. Fear of Leon. Fear of what would happen when he found out she was no longer weak. Behind her, Dante stood with his phone pressed to his ear, his tone calm, yet cold. "Find every lawyer, every cop, every official that man has paid. I want files, transactions, threats, everything," he said, his Italian accent sharpening his words into blades. "Anyone who helps him cover his tracks, they're done." He hung up and turned toward her. "You haven't slept," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Neither have you." Amelia's voice trembled. "He'll never stop. Leon doesn't lose. He'll burn the world just to prove he can control me again." Dante's gaze hardened. "Then let him try. I don't fear men who hide behind wealth. I've buried stronger." There was no arrogance in his voice, just quiet fury. 3 days later, Leon's world began to crumble, slowly, methodically, like a fortress eaten by termites. His top lawyer vanished from town. His private investigator was arrested for bribery. A journalist released an anonymous exposé revealing his history of domestic abuse and illegal campaign donations. His name, once polished and powerful, became poison overnight. Leon sat in his marble office, veins throbbing under his skin as he threw a crystal glass at the wall. "Find out who's behind this," he roared at his assistant. But the assistant only stammered, terrified. Because behind every whisper, behind every anonymous tip, there was one man's shadow, Dante Moretti, the Mafia boss who hated men that hit women. Meanwhile, Amelia was learning to breathe again. For the first time, she felt ownership of her own reflection. The bruises were gone, replaced by faint scars that looked like proof of survival. Dante had arranged for her to start therapy, to learn skills for independence, even to paint again, something she hadn't done since before Leon. She often found herself painting late into the night, while Dante watched quietly from the couch, pretending to read. He never asked what she was drawing, but every time she finished, he'd glance at it and say something simple, "That's strength." It wasn't love yet. It was something rarer, safety with heat underneath. One evening, Amelia walked into the study and froze. Dante was on a call, his jaw tight, voice low and dangerous. "No one touches him until I say so," he growled. "He needs to watch everything he built collapse before he breaks." Amelia swallowed. "You're going after him yourself?" Dante ended the call and turned toward her. "He hurt you, and he's still walking free, using his money to silence the truth. That ends tonight." Her pulse quickened. "Dante, you can't just kill him." His eyes flicked to hers, sharp and deliberate. "Who said anything about killing?" She stared at him, uncertain whether to believe him. Dante stepped closer, his presence warm but electric, like standing too close to lightning. "There are worse things than death for men like Leon. I'll take away the one thing he worships, power." He slid a small flash drive across the table. "This holds enough evidence to destroy him legally. But I'll need you to testify, to tell your story." Amelia froze. "You want me to go public?" "Yes," he said simply. "No more hiding." Her breath caught in her throat. "You don't understand. I've been silent my whole life. Every time I spoke up, I got punished." He stepped closer, voice low. "And every time you stayed silent, You got hurt. You're done being a victim, Amelia. You're a survivor now, and survivors fight back. The words hit her like thunder. For the first time, she didn't feel weak. She felt powerful. Terrified, yes, but powerful. 2 days later, the confrontation came faster than either of them expected. Dante had arranged a meeting at a neutral public location, a luxury hotel lobby downtown, full of cameras and people. He wanted witnesses, wanted the world to see what happened when justice stopped running. But Leon got there first. When Amelia stepped out of the elevator, flanked by Dante and one of his men, she saw him, standing near the marble fountain, tailored suit, cold smile. The same man who once called her his masterpiece. Amelia, Leon said, spreading his arms as if welcoming her home. You've caused quite the scandal. You should have just come back quietly. Dante's voice cut through the air like a knife. She's not going anywhere with you. Leon turned his gaze to Dante, sizing him up. And who the hell are you? Dante smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The man you should have never crossed. Leon laughed. You think I'm scared of some bodyguard? Bodyguard. Dante took one slow step forward, eyes locked. No, I'm the man cleaning up the mess you made. The tension snapped like a live wire. Leon's security detail reached for their weapons, but before they could even draw, Dante's men appeared from the crowd, blending out of shadows, their hands steady, their stares lethal. The entire lobby froze. Dante moved closer until their faces were inches apart. His tone was deadly calm. You laid your hands on her, he said. That makes you my business. Leon sneered. You don't get to threaten me. I have money. Influence. Not anymore. Dante interrupted, pulling a folder from his coat. You've lost every contract, every ally, every dime. Your accounts are frozen, your properties are under investigation, and the police will be here in exactly 2 minutes. I don't need to shoot you, Leon. I already erased you. Leon's jaw tightened, disbelief mixing with fury. You can't do this. I already did. Then Dante handed the folder to Amelia. Your turn. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photos, bank transfers, recordings, proof of every secret Leon thought he'd buried. She looked up at him, and for the first time, he looked small. You used to tell me I'd be nothing without you, she said quietly. But you were wrong. I'm finally something you'll never be, free. The police sirens wailed outside just as Dante promised. Cameras flashed. Leon tried to lunge toward her, but Dante stepped between them like a wall of iron. Touch her again, he said coldly, and I'll forget I promised not to break you. The officers stormed in. Leon was handcuffed, shouting threats that no longer held weight. As he was dragged away, Amelia stood motionless, her hands shaking. Dante turned to her. It's over. But tears streamed down her cheeks. No, she whispered. It's just beginning. That night, back at the penthouse, rain lashed against the glass again, the same as the night she escaped. Only this time, she wasn't running. She stood on the balcony, letting the cool wind wash over her. Dante joined her, his coat brushing against her shoulder. You did it, he said. No, she replied softly. We did. For a long moment, neither spoke. The city glittered below, the storm clearing. Amelia turned toward him. Why did you do all this for me? You didn't even know me. Dante's eyes softened. Because once, I had to watch someone I loved suffer and couldn't save her. You gave me another chance. Her throat tightened. And what happens now? He smiled faintly. Now, you start living. And he looked away. I go back to a life where I'm the monster who fights other monsters. She shook her head. You're not a monster, Dante. His eyes met hers, fierce and full of unspoken ache. Then why do I feel like one every time I look at you? Amelia stepped closer, her hand brushing his. Because you care too much. He didn't pull away. Instead, he took her hand. Firm, protective, gentle. Get some rest, he murmured. Tomorrow, the world will start talking about you. Let them. You've earned your voice. As he walked back inside, Amelia whispered to herself, and I'll use it. The next morning broke different. It wasn't quiet, it was powerful. The kind of morning where the air feels thicker, charged, like destiny itself was stretching awake. For the first time in years, Amelia wasn't afraid of sunlight. She stood on the balcony, the wind teasing her hair, watching as the city below whispered her name. News stations were replaying her story. Billionaire's wife breaks silence. Inside the empire of abuse. Her voice was everywhere. Her pain had become power. Leon was behind bars, awaiting trial, his empire collapsing under the weight of evidence Dante had quietly fed to every major network. The same world that once pitted Amelia now respected her. But victory never comes without ghosts. Inside the penthouse, Dante stood by the window, phone in hand, eyes dark and unreadable. "Yeah," he said into the receiver. "Pull all my men from surveillance. The job's done." He paused, listening, then quietly added, "No, don't follow her. If she wants to go, let her." He ended the call and exhaled deeply, staring at the skyline. For a man who had taken down crime families and corrupt empires, letting go of one woman felt like the hardest war he'd ever fought. Amelia stepped inside, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." She smiled faintly. "I thought mafia bosses never rest." He chuckled softly. "We rest when we lose something worth protecting." Her heart thudded, a painful rhythm. "And what's that supposed to mean?" "It means you don't belong in my world, Amelia." His tone was soft, almost tender. "You fought too hard to be free. You deserve a life without shadows." She placed 1 cup in his hand. "You think I can't handle shadows? Dante, you live in darkness, but you never let it touch me. You gave me back my life. You think I'll walk away now like it means nothing?" He looked down, trying to hide the conflict in his eyes. "If you stay with me, there will always be danger. The men I deal with, they don't forgive. I can handle bullets, betrayal, blood, but if anything ever happened to you..." She cut him off gently. "Then maybe it's time you had someone worth protecting for the right reason." Silence fell. It wasn't awkward, it was electric. Days passed. The media frenzy roared on, but inside the penthouse, life slowed into something fragile and real. Amelia cooked for the first time in years, burning eggs, laughing when Dante teased her for it. She started painting again, her canvases brighter this time. And every night, she'd catch Dante staring, like he couldn't believe she was still there. But peace never stays untested. One evening, as they shared dinner, Luca, the driver, burst through the door. "Boss, we have a problem." Dante rose instantly, eyes sharp. "Talk." Leon made bail. Someone pulled strings. Amelia's fork fell from her hand, clattering against the plate. No, that's impossible." Dante's calmness was chilling. "Where is he now?" "Word is, he's coming for her." Dante didn't flinch. "Let him try." He turned to Amelia, his tone turning protective but firm. "You're not leaving this building until I handle this." Fear trembled in her voice. "Dante, please, don't go looking for him. He's dangerous." He cut her off. "So am I." Before she could argue, he was already gone. Night fell heavy over the city. Rain poured again, the same way it had the night she ran from Leon. But this time, she wasn't the one running. Dante found Leon exactly where his sources said he'd be, an abandoned marina outside the city, half hidden by fog and salt air. Leon waited with 2 guards and a smirk that still dripped arrogance. Well, Leon sneered. "The famous Dante Moretti. My wife's hero." Dante stepped closer, unarmed, hands in his coat pockets. "Your ex-wife," he corrected. "And you're not here to talk, are you?" Leon laughed bitterly. "You think she's yours now? You think saving her makes you some kind of saint? You don't know her like I do." Dante's expression hardened. "I know she doesn't flinch when someone raises their voice anymore. I know she sleeps without fear. And I know she's stronger than anything you ever built." Leon lunged forward, shouting, "She was mine." Dante moved like lightning. One twist, one strike, and Leon hit the ground gasping, face inches from the mud. Dante didn't draw a weapon. He didn't need to. His fury was the weapon. "You don't own people," Dante said coldly, his voice vibrating with restrained rage. "You don't own pain. You don't own her. You're done." Leon spat blood, glaring. "You think you can destroy me?" "I already did," Dante said, stepping back. "Now you'll destroy yourself." Sirens wailed in the distance. He'd called the police before coming, ensuring this final meeting ended on his terms. As the flashing lights approached, Dante turned and walked away, leaving Leon screaming curses into the rain. Hours later, Dante returned to the penthouse, soaked, exhausted, silent. Amelia was waiting by the window, still awake. The moment their eyes met, she ran to him, tears spilling freely. "You could have been killed," she cried, gripping his soaked shirt. He lifted a hand, brushing her cheek with gentle fingers. I told you, I don't die easy. She pressed her forehead against his chest, sobbing softly. It's really over, isn't it? It's over, he murmured. He's going away for good. The world knows who he really is now. For the first time, she let herself breathe fully, deeply. Every wound, every bruise, every silent night of terror, it was all behind her. Dante cupped her face and looked at her the way men look at miracles they don't think they deserve. You changed me, he whispered. Amelia smiled through her tears. And you saved me. He shook his head gently. No, Amelia. You saved yourself. I just made sure the world saw it. Weeks later, newspapers called her the woman who stood up to power. She launched a foundation for women escaping abuse, funded quietly by Dante. She spoke at conferences, stood before cameras with courage in her voice, and told her story, not as a victim, but as proof that broken things could still shine. As for Dante, rumors swirled. Some said he'd retired. Others whispered he'd disappeared to Italy. But one evening, as Amelia closed her speech at a charity gala, a familiar voice behind her said, You still burn the toast when you cook? Her heart skipped. She turned, and there he was. Dante, in a black suit, eyes soft but full of fire. You came, she whispered. I told you, he said, stepping closer. I never run from light. I just needed to make sure the monsters were gone first. She smiled, tears glimmering again. But this time, they were happy ones. Then stay. He took her hand gently, eyes never leaving hers. If I stay for good. And for once, he didn't look like a mafia boss. He looked like a man who finally found peace. Would you have trusted the man sitting beside you if you were in her shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us what you would have done. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because the next story coming will shake you even deeper.